Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about sex and sensuality from the depths and from the heart. And we have an amazing guest here today, Dan Dorr, who is the co-creator of Good Guys to Great Men, facilitates incredible, I would say, transformation and deepenings for men, especially men who are going through hard times in their relationship, wondering if they're going to get divorced, actually getting divorced, or, starting over inside that question of, are we going to get divorced? So you really go in there with men in some of the hardest moments of their lives. And I'm grateful for you for that. And thank you for being here today to also go into some of these deeper, a little less concrete, more etheric places around heart and sex and sensuality.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I always enjoy your podcast. I'm always encouraging you to do more, just you, because I really like listening to you talk about stuff.
It's just so fun to have these conversations, though.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this is going to be a fun and interesting conversation.
So where do you want to dive in? Like one of my first questions, I think, is what opened you to this other dimension of sex, right? Like a lot of people have physical, pleasurable sex, and it's hard almost to describe, and maybe you can even describe it better, what happens when we open the doorways to these other dimensions of sensuality and sexuality, from the heart, from the energetics, from the soul realm. Do you have a way that you talk about this so that people can understand?
Well, I think there's an integration of both kind of the felt experience and the kind of conceptual experience. And obviously so much of what we are taught and we pick up along the way is very conceptual. And if you don't have somebody or some way of knowing how to take that and turn it into something practical and real and visceral, then it just stays that as a conceptual thing that you continually try to repeat, but you don't necessarily get the full experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had an ability to sense stuff that's happening around me, stuff that's happening in a room, stuff that's happening with other people, pick up on that sort of stuff. And
okay, describe stuff for someone who's like, what is he talking about? What's the stuff?
Well, so I would say that there's like a sixth sense, right?
Yeah.
So the sixth sense is that there's more information here than meets the
most
eye
of us are aware of, or meets the eye.
Yeah, totally. It's like there's more richness to this situation in this engagement than is necessarily obvious.
Right. And in any engagement, right? That we're not even in the bedroom yet. It's just like any interaction, any relational moment.
Yeah.
There are more dimensions here.
Yeah, and not just on, I think it's very easy to be like, okay, what's going on outside of me? Can I pick up on that stuff? And how much that influences you? If you're in a room with somebody who's in a certain frame of mind or emotional state, then how much does that influence you? Well, there's another element to that, which is like, how much am I influencing them?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
often really hard to be tuned into the internal stuff because we're so used to being tuned into the external stuff.
Right. The external and this kind of surface, mostly our mind, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember for me, there's points in my life where I can kind of link different things, and that might be an interaction with, a woman or a man, or it might be something like on a sports field, like on a sports field where something happened. Like, for example, I played a lot of soccer, and if the ball was coming to me, even if I couldn't see where the ball was coming, like it was coming behind me,
You
I
could
knew where it
feel
was.
it, right? You had that
And not
sense.
only that, I could see what was going to happen. So I could see
Wow.
what somebody was going to try and do, what I would do with the ball, and then exactly what I could see would happened.
Wow. Cool.
And but it's not necessarily like that sounds like I'm having visions. It wasn't a vision thing. It was an internal sensing thing.
Uh-huh.
So it was a knowing. So yes, you might talk about this as flow. You might talk about this as intuition. I think it's additional stuff that we don't necessarily have the right language for right now, but
I
it's
love the
there and
word stuff.
everybody knows it's there, and so one of the things that I'll do personally, but also I encourage other guys to do, like when they want to start learning some more of this, what about these additional senses and perception and stuff like that? Okay, go do something where you have to be aware of what's going on around you and it's changing quickly. So, sports are a really good example of that.
Yeah.
Because you pick up on stuff. Like the classic example is the basketball player who he's not looking at where his teammate is, but he hits him with the ball first time, because he knows where it is.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like he's aware. And I think if we make it even a little bit more concrete, it's like there's a field between us energetically, right? That I've started to tap into too, where it's like, oh, we have awareness of spatial distance, of temperature, of, things getting tighter, things getting more relaxed, right? There's like all these things that are happening in our field of awareness that are beyond the what do we say? Five senses?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you start having guys do things like, all right, go play sports or, blindfold yourself and walk around in your yard and like, start to get a sense of where are things around you or what haven't you been paying attention to? Because our eyes and our minds are the things that tend to be the most prominent.
Yeah, and with kids are great for this, right? Because they're so open, and, they're picking up, they're really sensitive to this sort of stuff all the time. Yeah. So you can see them reacting to people and you can see their emotions are right there, so you can really interact with that stuff. You can ask them direct questions about their emotions and what they want, what does the emotion want to say right now?
Yeah.
And you can ask them and they'll give you really blunt, honest answers. They're not filtering it through anything, so it just comes straight out.
Yeah, and oftentimes with the men I work with, and I imagine you too, but I'm curious about this, it's like especially men, but even all genders as adults, we've been trained to put some of that away, tuck it away, become numb to it so that we can, when we were young, it was like, okay, right, if our parents weren't very emotional and we were too emotional, then we wouldn't be loved or we would be punished. And so, right, all the things that we then tuck away, to me, it's felt like starting to bring those back out consciously, not just in my little girl state, but, I can actually be way more conscious of feeling and attuning to other people versus shoving that to the background.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of fun. It feels messy and it feels like, where's this going? What's the point? Because we're so used to everything needing a point.
Right.
So it feels messy and it feels like undirected. But when you get to the point of, understanding or connection or just getting somebody's experience or them getting your experience or even you getting your own experience sometimes, because you're like, fuck, I didn't even know. And suddenly you get it and you understand it. Then it's an amazing experience. Everything comes into alignment and settles, and Now you have much more access to the field, or whatever it is that you want to call the additional senses and
Information or
information.
stuff.
Yeah,
Okay, I
stuff.
want to help men who are like, whoa, where are you guys? Make it more concrete. Like when you say that you find things that are messy, because for me, right, everything is a doorway, whether it's anger or upset or fear, or like all of those are, can be a doorway to more intimacy and more, connection and love and sex. And what's the messy for you?
Well, the messy is that there's constantly changing. Everything is alive, right? So everything is constantly changing. You're constantly changing. I'm constantly changing. The situation's constantly changing. It is messy. Messy is kind of a negative word, but I don't think it should be a negative word, because it's just a description of the fact that stuff is unpredictable and it's not all in control. We think we have control over stuff, but we really don't have control over stuff. You just have control over what you see and perceive, or experience in this moment, and then how you want to respond to that. And so that then comes down to, okay, how much information do I perceive about myself? And that part of that might be down to who am I, my character, my values, and that sort of stuff, my current situation. Part of it might be down to how I'm feeling in this moment, what thoughts are coming up in this moment, and whether I want to honor those, challenge them. I think a lot of the stuff that men struggle with in particular is, well, I don't even know what I'm feeling. I feel good, I feel bad, and that's it. And then to get to some other level of understanding what you're feeling, really, I think just takes being willing to choose a thought, a description of what this experience is, and to be able to align with that and say that's true, and then see whether that feels true. Like as you align with something, is
so like,
that,
if it was, oh, I'm feeling kind of bad, or something's feeling heavy, or okay, is this more toward sadness? Is this more toward anger? Is this more toward fear? And then like checking that out, and then seeing, does that actually feel like, is there a zing of truth when I say that?
exactly that. So if I say there's some tension in my body somewhere, so I think maybe that's some fear, maybe I've got some anxiety about something that's coming up, and that could be true. It's very easy for tiny little thoughts to come in and be about something in the future. Again, I'm predicting the future, and I'm trying to work out what could go wrong or what could go right, and so that creates a chemical reaction or whatever, emotional reaction inside me. So then it's a case of, okay, well, then once I've identified, well, I think that's fear, often what then happens is there's a whole nother level that opens up. You get to go to a deeper level, and then there's more information there. And again, you get to choose. And I think it's very much like what you said, which is, I'm going to pick what I think is right for me, how I interpret this, and then see how that feels. What's my response to that? Does it feel right? And if it doesn't, then maybe I'm going to explore it a little bit more, get curious about it, and kind of open up to it, because all the information is there. If you're open to it.
And for me, right has a sort of like uplift of energy, and not right, I don't know if it's wrong, but it's like, oh, that's not quite it. It feels a little more like dull or heavy. Yeah. So okay, you mentioned control, and a lot of men want to be in control, there's a goal orientation, want to get there. And so if we bring this into sensuality, and things get messy and things are changing moment to moment, and I'm trying to pay attention to how I feel and my partner feels and all of that, like, how do you support men to embrace some of that stuff or some of that mess and stay with it rather than staying on their agenda?
Well, not to try and have a right or wrong version of
That's
what
the
this
first.
should be like.
Yeah.
If you're trying to, it should be a certain way, you're already detached from the experience. You're never going to get to the truth of what's really happening. And then so all the depth and the richness that we were talking about before in the connection, that's no longer accessible to you.
Yeah, that's profound what you just said, right? It's like anytime we're making something wrong and this isn't what's supposed to be happening, or we're supposed to get somewhere else, or she's supposed to be more turned on, or any of those things, it just takes us right out of the moment and the beauty that could be created through that, and puts us in more of a resistant or disconnected place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, I think there's another element of that, which is whether you would call it openness or whether you would call it high regard, positive intent. There's something in there where, when you're first together with somebody or you're first getting to know somebody and all you see is the potential.
Yes.
And so can you come from that place and can you give that to the other person? So I'm coming from a place of openness and I'm giving that curiosity, openness, positive intention, willingness. I mean, if you were to go to the extreme, you might call it the beloved or the divine willingness to be able to see that in somebody else, even when they're in a shutdown
state. So versus bringing your shutdown to their shutdown. So let's say a woman, a man's with a woman in a sensual situation and she's shutting down or she's not turned on in the ways that he wants.
Yeah.
Can we use that as a concrete example of like, how would you bring that openness or that perspective rather than, because there's oftentimes some disappointment or some frustration or some, I wish it was different. What do you do with that?
Well, I think curiosity is a key part of that, which is just, I don't have all the information. Like I can't see inside this person. And even the bits of information they are giving me are not necessarily definitely the truth of the situation.
They're just the lead, the thread, the beginning of the thread.
Exactly. So then it's a case of, okay, until I get to the point where I feel that, when you get to the point of actually getting the truth of the, you feel the difference. Like, okay, that's the truth. What we just got to there, that's the truth. And suddenly the connection is there, even if the truth is, fuck you. I don't even want to look at you. Okay, that's true right now. And now I can feel that we're in a state of connection because I'm not fighting you in the fuck you.
I'm not fighting the fuck you. Yeah, right. That's a doorway. And I think it can be really hard for any human to stay in that place of, wow, someone is a fuck you to me. Someone is totally shutting down to me. But the less personal it is, the more we have a chance to, could we explore this together?
Yeah, exactly. So then that comes down to alignment with myself or alignment with God or alignment with whatever it is inside me that is true, right? Which is that I'm okay, that I'm alive, that I'm here, that, so there's some very basic principles you can always come back to, which will realign you and bring you back into a present state.
Well, basic. And as you were saying that, it's like that sense of innate goodness that most of us don't just carry around. Most of us just weren't raised to have that be a given. Yeah. So I think that's where it can get tricky is, all right. And I think that's why you do the work you do and I do the work I do, is to help men get to that place of, I am good, I am strong, I am, lovable, all of those things, so that in those moments, it doesn't go down the shame spiral to, I'm fucked up, there's something wrong with me, therefore there's scarcity and everything's going to end up horribly, and all those negative stories that come from that.
Yeah. I think there's a principle in there too, which is that everything is insecure, right? Everything is insecure, apart from maybe what I believe about myself, if I do believe something about myself. So can I believe who I am in this moment, and can I believe my intentions in this moment? Am I even clear about those things? If I've got those, okay, now I have some solid foundation to be able to kind of reconnect with. If something in my situation is insecure, like a person or, money or whatever it is, something is changing quickly and I don't have any control over it. I need to be able to come back to some kind of security, and that's always going to be me. It's going to be me, my relationship with the divine or whatever you want to call it, like life force.
Right. Not basing your security or your sense of goodness from the outside. Well, unless you call spirit or divine outside, but I would say that's also more internal. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So there's disappointment, there's frustration, there's a sense of, wait, this isn't necessarily going the way I want it to go, perhaps. And then there could be a choice point in that moment of, all right, this is what's happening. Can I be a yes, even if I'm a no and I don't want it to be this way? Could I be a yes first to my own reaction? Like, all right, I'm frustrated. That's true, in
Yep.
this moment. And then where would you go from there? Is there a choice of like, okay, what do I want to do next? How do I want to engage with this? Or where would you go?
I know I have a propensity to go straight back to realigning,
Right.
and sometimes I think that's not a good thing because it can be a little bit like spiritual, um,
Like a
like
bypass or
a
something.
bypass, yeah, avoiding something.
Mm.
Um, so I think it just depends if I can still stay connected to the situation, still stay connected to the other person, whilst also still staying connected to my experience and staying aligned to what I know is secure for me.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, well, then kind of anything's possible. I
Right.
can have that connection to everything. So that's been a big practice for me, is coming back to that alignment, always coming back to that alignment, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll use, animals like horses or golden retrievers in particular to help with that. Like, look at a golden retriever. You can have a really shitty interaction, tell them off, throw something at them. And then the next time you
The
see
next
them, they're
second,
still
they're
like,
like,
I love you.
yeah.
They
Yes.
have no problem with being aligned.
Right. They don't hold the grudges, the resentment. I mean, and that's really the mind, right? That's really holding on to the past as opposed
Yeah.
to, oh, I can come to this moment with you right here, right now and see. Sometimes it's through some of those filters of resentment and past
Yeah.
experience. Like, oh, I can still see who you are. I can still honor you by not putting you in this box of, you've become this negative person or way or thing to me.
Yeah. I think if you were to take a golden retriever and say, what does open-hearted living look like? You'd be, you'd pretty much find it bundled up in that ball
Yeah.
of fur. They're just, they're
Yeah.
open all the time, always open to love, to experience, to fun, to the
Which, I mean, I
richness.
don't want to paint a picture of, okay, so now if you're not living that way, then there's something wrong with you and then you should beat yourself up over it. Because in my experience, I can be open, I don't know, this might be just because I'm a woman too, and my hormones change. And sometimes I feel grumpy as fuck, or sometimes I'm just, anxious, or sometimes I'm happy and so, delighted, all those things. But I can actually choose to be open to all of those. I'm not as much of a golden retriever, but I'm more of I can't, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I would say that I think a lot of guys want that. They want
Yeah.
the full range. They want the rage, they want the tears, they want the laughter and fun. They want all of that. I know you get some people saying, well, it's drama and I don't want to deal with drama. But I think again, you're keeping a
The
shallow
aliveness.
experience of life, and there's a much more richness. And like anything in life, you don't get to the deeper, richer stuff unless you're willing to go through something difficult, which in that moment, I'm grumpy, I'm pissed off. Okay, am I willing to go through a bit of grumpy and pissed offness and actually really feel it? Like, okay, do your worst. Let me be fully grumpy,
Mm.
because on the other side of that is good stuff. I guarantee you, on the other side of that is good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too. And I know a lot of men get blamed and shamed and attacked, and that's definitely not what we're talking about. But when I've had a man be like, all right, you're grumpy, bring it on, what do you got? And as long as it's not me attacking or blaming him, it usually goes through me in a couple minutes. But
Yeah.
if we're resisting it, it usually hangs on for hours or days, or, even longer for some people who end up then kind of depressed and down gray.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Well,
think what would
yeah, go ahead.
most women say, I know it's a generalization, but I hear it a lot. What would most women say is when they're in an emotion, whatever the emotion is, what they really need is for you to just be solid in who you are
Yeah.
and okay, right? That's all they need. Just you be okay. And then I can go through this and be with it and come out the other side of it and be okay with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you have like the distinction of the hummingbird versus the mountain lion, and the hummingbird is like trying to fix things. And, in my book, I have a chapter called The Myth of Happy Sex, where it's like, you don't have to try to get someone back to happy. There's incredible experiences that happen when we're together in these differently emotional, states together.
Yeah. And I think there's a interesting path for guys there. For me, definitely, like, one of the things I was awful at was receiving attention, receiving pleasure, receiving desire, all that stuff. I was always like, no, I got to make sure that she enjoys herself. I got to make sure. Yeah, totally. And I can see very clearly where that comes from. Like, my dad, he kind of crumbles when there isn't something he can give to somebody, where he's not able to provide something. Like, the value kind of drains away from him. So I can see where that comes from. But then I think it's a really interesting practice. We talked on a previous call, one of our group calls, you came on, and I was asking you, if you've got a woman in a work mode or masculine mode, how would you bring her out of that? We were talking about get into more of that kind of feminine, playful, full receiving, allowing, open mode, and interact with her from there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really fun experience to practice. Again, it ties back to what we were talking about before: richness, sensation, other different types of senses, different types of information. There is a whole there's a world of information inside you which you can tap into and use in those situations, and play with the world, play with her, play with other people, play with your kids. Like, that stuff there's so much richness there inside you. And if you can come from there with generosity, I think it's just fun.
Yeah, then it becomes more play. So how do you walk men toward the door of open-hearted sexuality or open-hearted sensuality? Like, I know we've been talking about this whole time, but can you give a little pathway, maybe even from all the things that we've said? Or your own experience, right? If it's not like a...
Well, I think one of the keys there is there's like a cycle of energy that goes from you to the other person and back again. Yeah. And so for that to be able to happen, like, you kind of have to open to allow the energy to flow through you.
You have to feel it
the other
in
person.
You and flowing
so you've
through
got to
you.
feel it. Yeah. And it's, the Chinese talk about all illness has an emotional base. And I've found, certainly for me, acupuncture has really helped me. I've had a load of nerve problems and stuff in my life, and acupuncture has really helped me in learning about that, and learning about energy, and how that's all about allowing the energy to flow. And again, where it gets stuck, that's where you get problems and illnesses and whatever else. It's the same stuff, right? But you're just tapping into and learning, almost like another language. How do I experience energy in my body? Do I even know what that feels like? It's happening. It's in the connection between the two of us, right? If I'm not aware of it, then I'm playing with a connection that is kind of, I don't even know what I'm doing with it, really, because I'm not aware of it. So I think the first thing is energy
and awareness. Because this has been trippy for me, that the more awareness you have of it, it's like it becomes more alive, right? So if you're in a connection and you're not aware of it, it usually is kind of dead end, or just, might be a low hum. But then as you start to become more aware of it and you cultivate that sense of it in your body, then it starts to enliven.
Yeah. And then so if there's energy flowing through you, then there's a natural, especially if you're actually engaging in sex, there's a natural flow of that energy to the other person and back to you. And that can be it doesn't need to be from physical touch, doesn't need to be from appendages being inside other things and stuff like that. It can just be within, the connection between the two of you.
Yeah.
I do think that the awareness of that, certainly for men, women really get this, right? And they experience this much more easily, I think, than men. They pick up on that sensitivity to intention, and the tension, certainly they can tell, and men can too, but I think women are better at doing it naturally. and I don't want to talk about, but I think that comes from mostly schooling and
Yeah,
education,
right.
how we
Men
bring
are
up.
kind of conditioned out of it. Some of my favorite moments of coaching men and just kind of doing that work of helping them find the access to the energy in their own bodies and then feeling it in my body and right, going back and forth, even over Zoom like this. I mean,
It's amazing over Zoom, you can still do it. Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
yeah.
But so then that tension, right, which
Mm-hmm.
is the energy, like there's tension in the energy. If you can get access to that,
Yep.
that I think when you're as a man, you can feel that tension, you feel sexual attraction, you feel connection to certain things and people and whatever else. If you don't need to do anything with it, if you can just feel it, that that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think women really appreciate being able to be around a man who obviously gets that, can feel it, understands it, can even talk about it
Mm-hmm.
directly,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
yet
doesn't need
doesn't
to kind
need
of
to
shoot
do
his
anything
load,
with it.
right? Doesn't need to like, yeah, have an experience, an orgasm or something, or,
Yeah,
something that just, that makes that energy go away. I think,
yeah,
right, the more comfortable we become with these wider, more expansive, more energetic states. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, so what did we talk about? We were talking about energy first. So I think what do you need to be able to understand energy, to be able to tap into it, to be aware of it? You need to be able to feel your body. You need to really be able to feel your body. You need to be able to start to discern different things within your experience. So again, there's no right or wrong. Stop trying to come up with the right or wrong. Even stop reading all the shit that's out there that talks about this stuff. Stop listening to me. Go and
Go and
experience it. Go do
actually,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, like one of our coaches, Garrett, is amazing, and he said he's got a golden retriever, right? He has a house out in the hills in Idaho, and the golden retriever in the morning would run up the hill, dig a hole, and like roll around in the dirt in the hole. So one morning, Garrett was like, "Right, so
I'm going to
went up
go.
there, yeah, like naked into the hole, cover myself in dirt. What does this feel like? It's cold on my body. Like it kind of opens me up a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
feel more of what else is here, what else is alive, what else is going on within me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. This is exciting. Before we complete, is there anywhere? I mean, I feel like we're just kind of tapping into
Yeah.
the start. So maybe we'll do a part 2, but is there anything you want to add about some experiences you've had, or what happens when you tap into um, this internal place of more openness and more energy and more heart and more, physicality? Like, what gets to happen for you, or what gets to happen in your connections?
So what happens for me when I tap into that is like a connection to like a prime, I would call it like a primal energy. So um, there isn't lots of mental stuff in the way.
Yeah.
Everything becomes much calmer, much clearer, and the next choice or action to take is very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like access to intuition, access to that additional information, stuff, senses, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
becomes much easier. It's like it's there straight away and it's really obvious. And there's no questions around it. So it's like the intuition it's dialed right in.
I love that.
Uh,
I was
and
just
then
thinking
from
about like in the realm of lover. Were you going to go there or no?
Well, I was just going to say, from a physical experience
Yeah.
wise, I can feel my energy much lower down in my core, and I can feel my chest being much wider open.
Yeah.
So it's like all those things that say, if you want to feel more masculine, then stand tall and widen spread your chest and all of that. That stuff happens naturally,
Right. As
but
you're
it's much
feeling.
more of a felt experience rather than me trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just aware of when I'm in an experience with a man who has access to that primal energetic part. And also he cares about me deeply with his heart, and I can feel his love. And it's like the primal lover.
Yeah.
There's something, and again, like, I don't want to make a generalization of every woman wants this, but for me, I definitely find that the combination of a freedom of energy, and I can, take you on a ride or lead, Doesn't always have to be dominant, but right, like there is an aspect of leadership in there at times, and loving, like a loving primal connection feels to me like then we've got the range of, oh, we can go anywhere because the love is there and the safety then is there.
Yeah.
And then it becomes play.
Yeah.
Loving play.
Yeah. And it can go pretty much anywhere because the safety is created there. But I think there is, so when you drop down to that level of energy, primal, the connection, you can tell, right? So you can definitely tell. It's really obvious if the connection is not in the same place, like if the other person is not there, if they're not open to that, or if they're not in the same place energetically, or they're not responding to you, you know, then you can really tell the difference. But so you can really tell the difference. And so when you tell the difference that they are, or they're very close, then things become really fun and easy, because again, I've got such clear access to my intuition. I've got such clear access to what wants to come through me. That we're kind of, it's like a dance, right? You're in the same energetic space that I am. And so you can see and feel intuitively, just like I can see and feel intuitively. And so it becomes really easy to move together.
Yeah. And it is like a dance, right? Like, oh, I can kind of feel just those subtle motions of how you're moving forward or backward. And then I'm attuning to that while also knowing where I want to take you or where I want to be, right? Or the moments I'm going to be taken, or it's like a dance. And then I was just thinking about how, okay, so if you're there, but your partner is not there, I think the tendency is to go to that place of frustration, or why can't they get there? Or, right, like we were talking about before, versus, oh, from this place of openness, can I come back to curiosity, appreciation, the eyes of the beloved?
Exactly.
Right?
Like,
Can we explore this together?
Even with this primal, which is kind of like carnal energy, right? Even with this primal carnal energy, can I still look at you and look for that chink of light that I know is in there somewhere?
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. What's one last thing that you want men to know, or some piece of wisdom for them as they're on this journey of opening their hearts and opening that the primal parts of them more in their sensuality and sexuality?
From my perspective, I think that in our coaching, we do a lot of talking about your emotional state is being created by you, right? So, and it's being created by you, by your thoughts and what you're focused on. But there is a loop that happens, right? And that loop is such an important part. So yes, you're creating your experience, which is great, because for a lot of men that means, well, there's a rational, logical path I can get to understand what emotion I'm feeling. Yeah, I would say there is. And so we can help you kind of get to the root of that. And if you open yourself up to all of the knowledge and experience that the sensational side of life, which is all through the body, is giving you, there's a richness of experience that what we would call negative emotions don't necessarily need to be negative at all. Like, they've got really useful information in there for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And where can men find more of your awesomeness?
So Good Guys to Great Men with the number 2, goodguys2greatmen.com. Steve and I run that together with our other coaches. There's lots and lots of resources on there that you can go and consume, see if they ring a bell for you. But if you want to get in touch with me personally, you can go to danieldoorcoaching.com and just get in touch with me directly there.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work
Thank
you're
you for
doing with
having
men.
Cheers.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144, or head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.